I feel like I've been betrayed by my own people is how it feels. And we need to stand together. And this feels like they're intentionally doing things that are ripping us apart.
Felina Robinson says she's been accessing counseling through the First Nations Health Authority for the past 2 years and has been working through generational trauma. Her grandmother went to a residential school, but now says that counseling is being ripped away from her. The First Nations Health Authority announced former residential school survivors and their families, as well as families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, will need to prove status to get certain services. The FNHA says a self-declaration method had been used, but that process became unsustainable.
So we've seen our counseling services under residential schools, I would say, grow dramatically over the last 2 years.
Jock says that timing coincides with the discovery of suspected unmarked graves. Robinson says she was notified by Metro Vancouver Indigenous Counselling that non-status Indigenous peoples, including Métis citizens, Inuit, as well as individuals from self-governed nations, will no longer have access to some programs. And Robinson says, as a Nisga'a woman, she is part of a self-governed nation, but has status.
There's no clarification in there for people that are status and from a self-governed nation. Nowhere in there. Again, I fall through the cracks of that identity crisis that I worked so hard to rebuild in counseling, and this one email crumbles all of that to pieces.
Some care providers say they were shocked by these changes.
We don't have enough time to transition people even to stop seeing us. So what we're seeing is a lot of counselors going, how do I do this for free? How do I just continue giving the services to this individual who is at a high risk of suicide instead of giving them the suicide hotline as their only option, or telling them, you know what, just walk into the ER if you're feeling a certain way, because there's actually nowhere else for me to send you.
For someone without status, providing that proof could be a challenge. Indigenous Services Canada says it can take between 6 months to 2 years to be registered. The FNHA says it's still too early to know exactly how many people will be affected by these changes.
And I would say more reality is in the neighborhood of 1,000 in total to 1,500. But again, that's subject to us actually implementing the verification process.
On Monday, Premier David Eby said his government would work to get more supports for residential school survivors.
And we'll look at what we can do to backfill as much as possible to provide that support that we know they need to deal with that trauma.
The changes to the mental health programs take effect Monday, but for those who can't access FNHA-funded services, it says there are other resources available, including healing lodges, friendship centers, and other culturally appropriate supports. Michelle Morton, CBC News, Vancouver.